it's out of my being. So that embodiment, out of that embodiment flows the message. So if it's not about information, it's about intent, and I get that clear, what is trying to be relayed? What's really the heart of the message? And that goes deep in my heart, it then flows. Instead of having to force something and conjure it up and try and make things happen, it's just who you are, so it flows. Because you're a good receiver, you then receive to give.
So let's switch it up a little bit. So we're talking about teaching to change lives. Like, who's a teacher in your life that changed your life, right? Like, as you recall and reflect and as you process, like, who is a teacher? I know you mentioned Jesus, and you mentioned the Bible being the basic instruction before leaving earth. So who on earth has been a teacher that has changed your life?
Yeah, I would definitely say my Papa Stan. He embodies the Father's heart. He's a man on mission, and he taught me the value of imparting what he received. And actually, as I give it away, it becomes more solidified in me. It's kind of ironic, because I've watched in his life as he has given a message, he's become more committed to what he's confessed, and he's been a father in my life. He's imparted to me the importance of letting it go within to then flow without. And he taught me to take 3x5 note cards, write out a scripture I'm focusing on, a passage, and just keep focusing, pull it out in the middle of the day and just look at it and let it go deep. And then it becomes a part of my being. So what I focus on becomes a part of me. And the power of focus is essential, and something I've learned from him as he's embodied the message he's relayed, and it's changed my life, and it's produced a focus to impart, because I received so much from him. Like, okay, this is the way. This is the way. Go and make disciples, disciplined learners. But to be a disciple, that I then make disciples from my being. As I follow, I then impart.
You said three powerful things, right? When we think of the concept teaching to change life, you said generosity, you said focus, and you said discipline, right? So in order to teach to change lives, we have to be generous. That means giving. And in order to give, we have to have receive. And in order to receive, we have to have a mentality of abundance. And you said focus is whatever our attention is on is the direction that we're going towards. Absolutely. And then you said discipline. Discipline is following through on a commitment, even when it's uncomfortable, even when we can't see the end, but it's ultimately falling in love with the process. So when we think about teaching to change lives, you said such powerful, applicable things that our listeners can actually take home. Like, okay, what am I focusing on? How am I practicing generosity? How am I practicing discipline? How am I communicating to connect? How am I giving and receiving? And how am I cultivating a culture where connection occurs? So when you think about, your aspirations to be a pastor, your pastor's heart, like, what is the drive? What is the pull there? And how does it relate to teaching to change lives?
That's a great question, and I'm so glad you asked, because the bottom line is, because I've received, I want to give. So as I am sourced correctly, I'm then empowered to resource others. And that's my driving force. Is I receive, I can't help but give, because this is transforming my life. And I'm like, hey, you've got to taste this. You've got to feel this. This thing is so impactful that I can't help but give what I've received. And what comes to mind is Warren Wiersbe's definition of ministry on being a servant of God. He said that ministry happens when divine resources flow to loving channels, which give them away to others, and then goes back to him. So that definition got a little botched up, but the bottom line is being resourced to resource, and then it all going back to the glory of the source. So I love that flow. So that's my motivation. As I give, I can't help but give, and it all flows back to him. The glory, the praise, and the honor, and it's so life-giving. Like, giving is the best way to live life. Being a radical giver and it's contagious to others, because once they taste that, it's like, man, I don't want to just keep this within. There's too much, like, there's not a scarcity, there's such an abundance, so give it away. I think that's the bottom line. The communication that transforms lives, it comes from a generous heart that is full. And even when I'm depleted, I then can get sourced correctly, and I'm abundant. There's never a lack because he's the source. So having a solid source changes everything.
That's powerful. So practicing generosity and giving from that place. Zach, like, if our listeners are just like, oh my goodness, like, I want to bring this guy on as a speaker, or I want to come alongside of him because he has aspirations of pastoralship and taking this journey, how can our listeners get connected to you?
Yeah, I would say Facebook would be the best means. Very active on Facebook and love empowering people. It's the channel of choice at this moment. Just getting to give what I'm receiving and empower those around me. So Facebook would be it. Zachary Crane.
Awesome. There you have it. Thank you so much for joining us on today's episode of Teaching to Change Lives. And I want you to remember something. Be the solution to the education evolution.
I love it.
Shepherd, 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 shepherd revolution. Shepherd, 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 shepherd revolution.
Hey, it's David Prosper, and welcome to the Shepherd Revolution podcast, a show for educators, parents, and those out-of-the-box shepherd leaders doing education differently. I want to say thank you for leading the education evolution. We are bringing practical strategies, systems, and solutions to help you thrive as a revolutionary shepherd.
Shepherd, 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 shepherd.